All right, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. As you all know, my name is Pete Smith. I'm the president of US Performance Academy. USPA is a digital school for grades 6 through 12 designed for high performance athletes. And part of that role, aside from supporting athletes academically, is also integrating their athletic goals. And part of what today's presentation from Joe is about is a small piece with regard to training journals, but we feel a really important piece and part of our integrating the constant needs of our student athletes with what happens in their academic world. So on to Speaker Joe. He is a two-time Olympian, Olympic gold medalist, father, advisory council member, and simply an all-around great guy. Joe and I have known each other for a long time now. I think one of the things that's most unique about Joe is his willingness to share in the successes and those elements that he utilized, and frankly standing at the top of that podium and having a gold medal put around his neck, and that willingness to share and the detail in which he's going to go into it, to us really provides a unique opportunity for all of our student body and all of you to learn from somebody that's been in the trenches and then been at the top of the podium, and it's really exciting. So what I want to encourage you to do is, over the next 20 minutes while Joe's talking, is really pay attention not just to the details, but also interact with Joe. And there's a couple things I want to tell you about from a nuts and bolts perspective that will allow us, or allow you, I should say, to interact. If you run your mouse over the screen where Joe's presenting now, or where the slide is, you'll see a Q&A button and also the ability for polls. And we're gonna be introducing polls throughout the webinar. We're also going to be allowing you to ask questions in real time to Joe, and he'll choose whether or not to stop depending on where he is, or he might address it at the end of the webinar. But either way, it's an opportunity for you to not only learn a bunch from a guy that's been there before, but also to interact and sort of guide the conversation. And I think that can be one of the unique spots for these webinars, is the ability to sort of guide and frankly have your question answered. So again, I would encourage you to pay close attention. It's an amazing presentation. I've seen it a few times. We're excited to have Joe. And again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. With that, Joe, I am going to turn off my camera and mute my audio so I don't interrupt you. And the screen or podium is yours.
Thank you very much, Pete, and I'll apologize in advance for any interruptions that I may have from barking dogs at my house. But that's part of living in a rural area here in Southeast Tennessee, where I find myself today. And I'm so honored to be here. And Pete, that was a great introduction. And I'll tell you, I think the part that makes me the most proud is to be a parent of a student in the school. I think I speak for all athletes that I competed with in the 80s and the 90s, that when they were in school, when they were the same age as the people who are the students at USPA now, boy, we sure would have liked to have had something like this when we were their age. So with that, I'd like to take everyone here back to a very special and very powerful day in my athletic career. This goes back to August 2nd, 1992. This is the day that my whitewater slalom canoe partner, Scott Strasbaugh, and me won the Olympic gold medal at the 1992 Olympic Games. And this was the first gold medal in the history of the sport for the Americans, in the history of the sport of whitewater canoe slalom. And as I think back to that day, it's funny, I don't remember very much of what happened after we crossed the finish line. I can tell you there were a lot of hugs, there were a lot of handshakes, there was an Olympic medal ceremony, there were some media interviews, there may have been a few tears as well. That reaching a goal like that is, it's a very special place. That is the top of the mountain in the Olympic Games. But here's what I do remember. Within a couple of hours, I walked from the whitewater venue back to the Olympic Village where we were staying. I walked into my room in the Olympic Village, put my bags down, put my gear on the floor, and I sat down on the bed and I pulled out out of the top desk drawer a spiral notebook, and I logged an entry into my training log. Even just after winning the gold medal at the Olympic Games, I found that I wanted to continue this process, a process that I had actually started when I was 12 years old, 10 years earlier. And I grew up on the Potomac River in the Washington, D.C. area, and I was with an incredible training group, all world champions, world medalists, a legendary coach. And one of the very first things they told me when I started this, with them, is they said, keep a training log. And I did it. And I did that every single workout. I never missed a workout on my training log in the 10 years between age 12 and 22 years old. And what I'll tell you, let's jump ahead to a little closer to where we are today. After the 92 Olympics, I continued to train as an athlete, but I wasn't quite so up to date with my training log. Sometimes I would write in it, sometimes I wouldn't. And then as I got into life after sport, and I actually took on a career job being the chief executive officer of USA Canoe Kayak, I began to get unhealthy. I put on weight. I made poor choices in my food, in my sleep. I basically took the things that you aspire to do and every day, and I did the opposite of those things. So I kind of lost my habits. And when it got to a point where I knew that I wanted to get healthier, that I wanted to get my life back in order, I actually went back to the things that worked for me once before in my life. Now, I don't want to win a gold medal in the Olympics today. I'm going to leave that to all of you, the students here at USPA. But what I did do is I brought back the training log into my life. And so every day, and I reframed it for where I'm living now, it gives me that option to write and to reflect and to hold myself accountable for the best person that I can be. And that is the premise of the training log conversation. That sets up everything, not just how I used the training log when I was 12 years old, but even how I use the training log today. So with that, let's get into the presentation and what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to cover 3 points in this webinar about training log. And number one, going to talk about why keep a training log. Number two, I'm going to talk about the framework for your training log. And number three, I'm going to talk about how to learn from your training log. So those are the 3 things, and of course, I want to hear from you during the way. If you have questions, as Pete said, just go ahead and ask, and then of course we'll be doing questions and answers afterwards. So let's get started with our first point, why a training log. So when I talk about why keep a training log, I really focus on 3 key points. Number one, I like to have a way to hold myself accountable. As I look at all of you, the students here, the young people that want to be good in sport, that want to be good in school, we have a lot of people in our life holding us accountable. Maybe we have parents, we have teachers, we have coaches. But what a training log does is it teaches you how to be accountable to yourself. So that action of actually writing what it is that you want to do, what it is that makes your pursuit of sport, of academics, of what you want to do in life, and being accountable to yourself, that is a huge component of why to keep a training log. Secondly, I like to have a place to reflect. And I want my reflections to have meaning. And I don't mean just picking up an iPhone and typing a few words into a journal app. I really like paper and pencil and reflecting upon why, not just the what I do, but why it's important to me. And that point of reflection just allows me to connect to my athletic pursuits and why I do them on a deeper level. And that only helps to help me focus on what's important and what's going to help me move the needle and just try to do a little bit better each day. And then thirdly, and this is a huge one, this I didn't figure out when I was your age. It took me at this stage of my life, but I would love it if you would consider doing this in your training log. And that is gratitude. That ability to, in some way, to write down once a day what you appreciate about the opportunities that are in front of you, what you appreciate about the challenges that are in front of you. That ability to practice gratitude and to write that gratitude down is a powerful practice. If you do it just 1 or 2 times a week, you won't see a lot of change. This is something that actually takes a little bit of time to build, but as you do, it makes a profound difference in the way that you begin to experience not just success in your sport, but how you handle challenge when it comes up as well. So these are the 3 reasons, and then I will just throw in as a bonus, it is very nice when you have a training log just to have something that makes you proud, a book that really summarizes what you do, why you do it, and it's a very nice keepsake and memento that reflects your personal investment and your personal reflection on your journey to better performance in school and sport and in life. So let's move on to the framework for keeping a training log. So one of the things that I've begun to figure out about training logs is that the training log is less about your what and it's more about your why. You can open up your training log and you can write in what you do, but one of the things I'm going to talk about today is how to go about and frame why it is you do what you do. Honestly, in a quick way. This doesn't have to be long, and this kind of gets into sort of 3 overarching points that I have for the framework of keeping a training log. Number 1, you need to log in every day. I know this is not like a lifting heavyweight workout where you lift hard one day and then you need a couple of days off to recover before you can lift hard. This is light lifting, but this is important lifting. This is the lifting that exercises those tiny little muscles that make such a big difference in your performance. Log in every day, no days off. I generally like to do about 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. It's not that much different than the time it takes you to check in on Facebook. Secondly, it's important to be real. It's important to be honest with yourself. A training log is not going to be helpful to you if you're being anything less than 100% truthful. That's what's going to bring out the real emotional power that goes into this exercise. And third, as I said, it doesn't have to be long. Be concise. You're talking to yourself in your training log. This is your real voice talking to you. You know what it's saying. You're just answering and acknowledging that pretty quickly, pretty concisely, and you'll see in just a moment here just something that takes a few minutes a day. So log in every day, be real, and be concise. All right, moving on. So what goes into your training log? And I'll start by saying that it's the right questions that bring forth the right answers in your training log. So for me, the training log kind of has 2 components to it. First are the measurables, and here you'll see what they are. I like to log my hours sleep, my morning resting heart rate, and if I have a scale, the body weight. And what happens with these 3 measurables, the main reason for doing it, there's going to be a lot of things in your training log that you can't measure. And then we'll get into that in just a moment. But it's good to have a couple of baseline factors. There's some other things you can do, but these are 3 easy ones. So with these, as you track these each day, you can begin to look for subtle changes in maybe on a certain week that you had to wake up earlier in the morning, or you had to go to bed later at night, or maybe you wake up one day and you're feeling especially tired, or maybe you're feeling a little bit sick. And you'll notice that if you actually go back and you look at the hours sleep, or you look for, say, a change in your morning heart rate that went up 10 or 15 beats from the normal size, or a change in weight, it may be an indicator that you need to take a look at the volume, the quantity, the focus of what you're doing, and maybe dial back and take better care of yourself. So it's good to have those basic measurables that you can go to in your training log. Now let's go into the questions. And what I like to do with the questions, this is my case for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. And I have these three questions, and I'm going to go into detail. And this really gets into the why that I was talking about. Not what you do, but why we do something. So that first question is, what's my outlook for the day? Now, it would be very easy in this question just to write, oh, I've got a science test, a geometry quiz, and an endurance workout, and then I have I'm giving a speech at a community event in the evening. But what I'm really looking for here is, what do you want to bring forward into the day? What are the things that you want to pay attention to? And really, what is your intent for the day? I really try to let those two words, attention and intention, guide what I want. Even if it's super obvious to you, like that's going to be, this is still a great opportunity to acknowledge that in writing and be a little bit more in line with that outlook than you would be if you didn't write it down in the first place. The second question is, what is my relationship focus? So again, even if this appears obvious, I'm going to interact with teachers that I know I'm going to interact with today, or coaches or family members. This is a great way to help you improve those relationships by just putting a little bit of extra energy and focus. I'll tell you, this morning when I answered this question, I always write my family, because I know I'm going to interact with them and I want to try to bring my best self forward into those relationships. But I knew I'd be interacting with Pete Smith today. And just by writing that down, it just gets me thinking, how can I serve this friendship with Pete? How can I help him a little bit more? So I think in sport, you have your relationships with coaches, you have relationships with teammates, you have relationships with people who want to help you along the way, teachers, family members. This is a great place to just acknowledge them and realize you may be interacting with them through the day. And then the third one, I talked a little bit about gratitude before, and this is your place to do that. For what am I grateful? Here, there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can take something very natural and simple. You could take one thing and write 3 reasons why you're grateful for it. You can come up with 3 different things that you're grateful for. Again, this is like lifting the very light weights that you can do every day. The more that you get a sense for what you're grateful for, and don't make them just good things. Sometimes challenging things happen, an injury, a setback, just a challenge that comes up. Figure out a way that might actually be a positive thing for you, something that allows you to reframe that. And that's what the spirit of gratitude truly does, is that it helps you to take those challenges and figure out a positive in them, and be glad that they happen and for all that you have in front of you. So in the evening, kind of moving on to the evening questions, 5 more minutes, 3 more questions. Here I like to do 2 obvious questions. What went well today, and what could have gone better? And so this is a good place to acknowledge even just some simple things, but don't let the small things go by. Acknowledge them in writing. It could be a good score on a quiz. It could be a nice phone call or a text message communication that you had with a friend. This is a great place just to acknowledge even the simple, small things that went well. And then, like I trust you as athletes, you can always find one part in your day that you could have done just a little bit better. And this is a great place to say, where could I have done just a little bit better? Maybe I could have used my time just a little bit better. Maybe I could have served someone just a little bit more. Maybe I could have done something in practice that would have helped my team a little bit more. This is the place to answer it. This is for you. Only you are going to look at these questions. And then the last one, and this is something that I wish I had done when I was your age. I do it now, but what an opportunity. How did I serve my sport, my community, or my team today? And the reason I put this question in here for you is I would hate for any of us to go to sleep at night leaving this question blank. We have an incredible opportunity in front of us to be a part of a great school, to be a part of great sports, to work with great coaches and great resources and in great communities. And so we should try to find at least just one small way to serve the people and the entities that serve us on a daily basis, to really try not to let this question be blank when you go to sleep. That's a big part of striving for more. That's that way of trying to give back a little bit more than what you take out of this great opportunity that's in front of you. So let's kind of move into the last part of our training, learning from our training log, the third part of our webinar. So you have this book that you're working through. It is a work in progress. It is continuously being written. The way I like to use these is to learn from them. Is number one is to review your training log weekly. And here's an opportunity not to just go back and maybe look back at how you felt at different parts of the week, but this is a great opportunity for you to look at some of those daily measurables and look for changes in your sleep pattern, your resting heart rate, and see if there's any small changes you need to make to your schedule in the week ahead. Secondly, again, it's not a short-term project. You're going to be working on this for a long time. You think long-term with this. Just be glad that you're acknowledging this very special pursuit during this very special time in your life and doing it on paper and this way that really connects you a little bit more deeply to your athletic pursuit. And finally, I think it's really important to have a way to pat yourself on the back, a way just to acknowledge to yourself, not from other people, a little bit with a little bit more depth and a little bit more quality, what you're doing in school, on the field, and in your community. And so that training log becomes a really great part of that. Now, that I think now is a good time probably to move into questions. Maybe, I know we skipped over one thing, and maybe we could start off with this, but let's put up a poll. I'd like to know from you at this point, how many of you are already keeping training logs and how many are not? So if you guys would just fill in that poll, it's on the front of your screen. I'll give you a few seconds. Everyone do that? All right. Well, what I would say is it looks like some of you are already keeping training logs, and I hope that here we have actually found maybe giving you some reasons to think, if you're not keeping a training log, to think about keeping a training log. Again, not only is it something that I'm really grateful that I did as an athlete, but it's something I brought back into my life now, and I couldn't imagine doing it without it. And so it's a very powerful thing. All right, let's move into your questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Joe? And remember, you can use the Q&A at the bottom to ask them. We can read them back. Joe, if you can just recite anything you get. And if you guys have questions regarding U.S. Performance Academy specifics, we're going to share some contact information afterwards as well. But feel free to start firing away with questions.
All right, I see a question from a USPA student named Seo Jacoby. And her question is, do you think a training log was a large reason of why you went to the Olympics? You know, I think that when you reach a high level and a high performance, and it was a performance you wanted to achieve, I think what you realize is that it's a lot of little things coming together at just the right time. And I think once you've gone through that, it makes you appreciate the small things as well. And I think the training log was more than a small thing. So yes, I would say that I believed when I was 12 years old that this was important because I had world champions and legendary coaches telling me that's what they did as well. And I would also say that as you get started with your training log, you might wonder at first, am I doing it right? And the answer is yes, you're doing it right. If you're taking the time to open up a notebook and take out a pencil and start writing about what you're doing in a thoughtful, purposeful way, you're doing it the right way. And as you get into it, you're only going to try to do that a little bit better. All right, an anonymous viewer asks me, explain how a training log helps in my academic pursuits. Well, I don't think it's just about the athletic pursuits. I think that being good in academics is a function of bringing your best self to the game, to your game every day, in the classroom, on the field, in your community, with your family. This is about ways that make you more reflective, more grateful, and more purposeful in what you do. So I think as you do this more often, you're going to learn more about yourself. You're going to figure out, especially if you answer the questions that I gave you, I think you're going to find some ways that this will help you in all aspects of your life, not just the school. All right. Did you put results from race times in your training log? It's a great question. I will tell you, I did put race results in there when I was racing. I remember my entries into the training log would be longer, deeper, more thoughtful when I wrote after a race than when I wrote after practice. Sometimes, and again, this was a learning process for me, was that practices I would tend to gloss over a little bit into the what I did as opposed to really what was going on and how I was feeling. And then as I raced, I got deeper. And then as I began to race more, I began to ask myself, how do I make my practices more like my races? I mean, that's why I'm training in the first place. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an evolution there, is to get is to put your results in there, but ask yourself reflect about how you're feeling about the results, not just what they were, but how you feel about them. Acknowledge that, sometimes when you win, you might feel like you could have done better. Sometimes when you don't win, you feel like you actually learned something really great, like you had some moments out on the course that you never felt before. So this is the place to acknowledge that. That's where you can grow from it. Seo asks if you could have told your 12-year-old self on the day you started your training log, what would you say? I would tell my 12-year-old self that that you wouldn't believe how the process of writing your going through the process of this will help you, not just in your athletic pursuits where it seems very obvious, but really in so many of your pursuits after sport, in your relationships, in your work, in your service, and just in your pursuit to do better. That it's really the things that you learn, the things from writing, the things you're going to learn from writing are going to serve you so well. And what you're doing right now, because it's important to all of you, it's so vivid, it's so special, and this, by writing it down, it just heightens and strengthens that movement and will serve you better later on as well. Here's another one. Did you ever put course maps in your training log? That's a great question. So this question, let me explain what course maps are. in our sport of whitewater slalom, but this applies to any sport out there. It could be sailing, it could be skiing. When you know what the field of play is that you're going to be competing on, and this could be the day before the actual event, sometimes writing it down or sketching it out on paper in your training log can be a great way to help you visualize your performances for the next day. So in the sport that I came from, whitewater slalom, where you're racing carbon fiber canoes and kayaks through poles hung above on wires above the rapids, and you're maneuvering through those poles for time, sometimes sketching out those course maps can help you understand certain movements and techniques and strategies you want to apply at certain times. So this is something I could imagine being helpful to an athlete in sailing. But also I could look at a sport like synchronized swimming where you're trying to execute a specific routine, and that even sketching out some of the movements, some of the important movements that you want to make and things that you're working on and things that will help you crystallize what that performance is going to look like at that time. These are great questions, by the way. I love this. I love this. Any more questions at this point? One thing that I want to tell everyone, I know we went through the structure of the training log kind of quickly. We went through the measurables, the morning questions, the evening questions. I'm going to create a downloadable template. When it's ready, we will email you so that you'll have this yourself. And in the meantime, if you want to, have any questions, you can always email me as well off of my website, joejacoby.com. And Pete, thank you so much for the opportunity to get to do this.
No, thank you. And as Joe said, I think there were a lot of important things that were brought up. And if you guys have questions or concerns, I can't stress this enough. Visit joejacoby.com, reach out to him. He's also, he's not giving himself enough credit. He's got a great newsletter that goes out. I think that's the right word, every Sunday. It's a really sort of thoughtful bits of writing that make people think. So I'd encourage you to go there and sign up for that list as well. It's worth the time. If you have questions about what we do at USPA, you can obviously check in with us at gouspa.org. Joe, there is one more question from somebody you might know.
Yes, she seems to have a lot of questions today, so I will just say
this. Not letting you off the hook by any means.
No, not at all. This is another question from Sayo, and she says, "Do you use a training log as part of your job, or your daily job as well?" And I do. This is something I brought back into my life a little over a year ago, in my efforts to get healthier, and not just to, make better choices in the food I eat and trying to sleep better, but this just allows me, those questions really allow me to focus on and remember what's truly important. And that's why, I was really excited as not only for the students, the student athletes to come to this, be a part of this webinar, but to the parents too. I have no interest in trying to win a gold medal today. I'm going to leave that to the students. But I think that you can repurpose the things that you use to be successful at other points in your life and figure out how to use them in a way that help you today. And that's why I keep it. That's why I journal. Just takes about 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, and it's a great exercise. And it'll actually get you asking yourself, gosh, what else can I do? And that's a great place to be in life.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much again. Everyone, thank you for taking time, I'm sure out of a busy Friday afternoon. I hope everybody has had a great week and it continues through the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye-bye.